Hello, ngHouston. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have a really great show. I met this great guy, Kevin McGrail, in Canada a month or two ago, and I asked him to come on. I do a lot of networking with Angular people, but I went to this GDE summit and met all kinds of experts, not necessarily just Angular. So Kevin is a cybersecurity expert, which I think is pretty cool. So I asked him to come on and show us, teach us some cool stuff. So I have a couple panelists I want to introduce, and then we're going to jump right in. So first, we'll bring back Lance. We know Lance, but Lance, you want to say hi?
Yeah, hello everyone. I've been a panelist a few times. I'm a software developer with Oasis Digital in St. Louis, and I'm an instructor with Angular Bootcamp. So yeah, we don't focus on cybersecurity, but if you want to take a 3-day class on learning Angular, hit me up afterwards.
You guys are awesome. And you missed an episode or two. Where have you been? Weren't you traveling?
Not a whole lot, just, family.
Just working, busy? You have other things to do besides come and hang out with us every week?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I hope you don't take that too personally.
No, I was hanging out with Bill and Michael and Lynn in London last week, and I never met Michael and Lynn, and I feel like we've just been ships passing in the night. We've probably almost met a few times, and I really love them. They're great. I feel like you guys have been keeping them a secret from me all this time.
Yeah, they're pretty cool people.
We got to get Michael on the show so we can give him a hard time.
Okay,
well, it's good to have you back. And we had Melissa for a second, and Melissa might jump back in. I met Melissa at ngConf and again in London, and she's super cool, and I like her a lot. She's never been on the show, but she's having some internet issues, so we'll see if Melissa comes and goes. And then we have Felix, and Felix, I've actually talked to you, I think, once or twice, and I think you're super cool. And you just jumped in and said hello in the chat, and so I pulled you in and said, come and join us on the panel. So, surprise, you're a panelist. Yeah. How are you doing? And where are you calling from?
I'm from Toronto, so I'm calling from here, and I work also as a software developer. I'm actually starting a new job on Monday at Wrangle. That's really exciting. Yeah.
We love Wrangle.
Yeah.
Well, tell Wrangle we said hello, and they should send us more. They can send you back on, and you can teach us something cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. Speaking of teaching us something cool, hi, Kevin.
Hello. Hi everybody.
So you said you were going to be broadcasting from the hospital tonight, and I tried to give you a rain check and let you out of it because I don't want to. I feel like a slave driver making you come on and teach us cool stuff, but you're a trooper.
Oh, it's all good. I'm happy to do it. It keeps me from being too bored here. Well, anybody who's ever been in a hospital knows it's mostly hurry up and wait. So that's
for sure.
Pretty much.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on and hanging out with us tonight.
Absolutely, and I'm going to start presenting a thing here too, so you guys can see some slides that I want to talk about.
Yeah, and the quick background on this. So I had asked Kevin to come on and talk about this. He wrote an article recently that I thought was a really good article, so I asked him to come on. And it's not necessarily specific to Angular, but there will be maybe some special stuff in there. So this was an episode that I requested because I thought it was a really great article.
Well, thank you. So. Yeah, this started out with a presentation I did for Google, and Better Cloud really liked it, so I wrote it up as a blog for them. And then you asked me about it, and I had to add an extra tip, so it's gone from 30 to 31 to 32. So we're going to have to beat Baskin-Robbins here soon. But yeah, pretty much, the main thing I wanted to start with is some real-world security tips that are a little more modern, and some of them are a little controversial, but I've worked in some very interesting places, and so we'll get into talk about me. So I work at an organization called InfraShield. We assess, defend, restore, and recover high-value, high-target systems in cyber-physical security, things like satellites and nuclear energy licensees. There's my LinkedIn. It's in the slides as well. I love talking to people, so feel free to reach out to me.
And the nuclear, you mentioned a nuclear topic that you were working on that you could come on sometime and talk about. What was that?
Yeah, so, I think a lot of people would be interested to hear, like, we've had a couple of hurricanes, we've had a lot of things going on, and, why don't we hear about issues where, hurricanes affect nuclear power, and how are they prepared for that? And that's part of the world I work in, is both cyber and physical. And that's a type of security a lot of people aren't very familiar with. A lot of people know IT cyber, so informational technology, but they're not familiar with OT and operational technology. So OT cyber, and also then taking in the physical security. So, we don't do things like, we're not security guards that secure the buildings, but a lot of security starts with the physical, environment the building's created with, the surrounding areas, as well as things like the operational technology, like the building control access systems. Some high-profile hacks that have occurred, for example, have come in through like HVAC systems, through POS, point-of-sale systems, where they've gotten into credit card systems. So a lot of that is areas that people in traditional IT cyber have no expertise.
So I think, and this is the thing, like I said, that this general security tips, I think is more general, and I think a lot of people would benefit from it. But the whole, like, what would happen with the nuclear plants if there was a hurricane, like that, I think that's really interesting. But I don't know if I'm just a big nerd, and you guys have to reach out to me. If you guys think that's an interesting topic and we should have Kevin back on to talk about that, you need to reach out and let me know, because I try to keep it like it's an Angular show, right? So it should be related to Angular, but I think it's interesting. I think the whole cybersecurity topic itself is interesting. So, but
Absolutely.
Tonight we'll focus on this.
Yeah, and the big thing for me also is not just terrifying people that everything's going to be hacked tomorrow. So, that's a big part of what I try and make sure people aren't terrified when they get done with the presentations. So, anyway, so shall I get started?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So the first tip, and this one's not too controversial, but it basically starts with the concept of using passphrases, not passwords. So a lot of people are very familiar with this concept of using things with extra characters and 2000 numbers and exclamations and pound symbols and stuff. And pretty much what I'm going to tell you is that those are not the way to go. The better way to go is things like, for example, I have a wedding ring here, and a password that I recommend constantly is things like, my wedding anniversary is January 1st, 2012. By doing that, it serves two purposes. It's a very long password. It's got a lot of complexity to it, but it's very easy to remember, and it makes you remember your anniversary. So, and that kind of leads into a website that I love. So talking about nerd things, XKCD, I find this website hilarious. It reminds me of Dilbert, but even more technical. But basically what XKCD did is they kind of went through and did a cartoon showing that the entropy on, in this example, it's correct horse battery staple, is more secure than using Troubadour with all kinds of crazy characters and whatnot. And quite a bit higher level of entropy on that from a brute force standpoint. So the science is sound that passphrases are better than passwords. And additionally, the big thing, whoops, I went too fast. The big thing that occurred, I think last summer, I think July of 2017, NIST changed their recommendations for digital identity. So that 863. And basically what this says in geek speak is, don't make people change their passwords. So these things where you have to change your passwords every 30 days or 60 days or whatever, they aren't more secure. They actually make people less secure because you have to write them down and things like this.
I was just going to say that. We write them on sticky notes and stick them to our monitors. That's why, because you make us change them every 30 days. So we just put them on sticky notes.
Right, and the entropy is not there, and people use the exact same passwords, or they'll change it very minorly. Like they'll use an exclamation one month, they'll use an @ symbol the next month, they'll use a pound symbol the third month, which kind of ties into the next thing that people make a mistake with is unique passwords. So one of the biggest problems we have is people not using unique passwords. There's a great website out there you can go to, it's free, called haveibeenpwned.com. That website will tell you, they troll the dark web, they look for compromised websites that have had their data dumps put out there, and they index them, and they ethically disclose that information to administrators and users. So if you're an administrator of a domain name, you could go there, you can type it in, it will monitor, it'll tell you when new things show up, and it'll tell you when a person's email address, not email address, password has been compromised. And with that type of information, users, I like to use this to show people that, hey, if you use your password one place and it gets compromised and you use the same password everywhere, it's pretty much known to the dark world, and you don't want that. And there are some techniques that I like to show people. Like, for example, I use a base password and I use a cipher. And so you can do things like Pig Latin or Caesar, or the middle letters of the site. So basically I have a cipher that I pull on top of every single website plus a base. And with that, I can use an easy to use passphrase plus a cipher that's specific to that website or that specific use, and I never have to like write down a password or remember what's going on. So it's a really great way to be secure and kind of show people the way forward on passwords instead of sticky notes.
Before you go on, what do you think for passwords? What do you think about things like LastPass and 1Password?
So one of the things that you probably don't want to hear is that I track. One of my hats that I wear is I work with the Apache Spam Assassin project, where I've been helping with that project for a little over 20 years now. And so one of the techniques I do is I track individual email addresses for places. And with those individual email addresses, I can track where compromised issues occur. And so LastPass, I think I have the right one. They were bought by LogMeIn maybe. But anyway, they're one of the ones that I've tracked as having had a database compromise before. But in general, the 1Pass, those type of techniques where they're cryptographically stored are better than using sticky notes. But I will say that I like to try and get towards base passwords plus ciphers, because anything that's written down somewhere, can be broken, kind of thing.
That's a hell of a recommendation, Kevin.
Yeah.
Better than a sticky note.
Yes. Yep. And additionally, so I had, some of these tips are a little controversial because a lot of people will argue that password regimens for changing them is more secure. NIST is very clear now that that's not the case, and I've been arguing that for about 10 years now. But one of the ones that I'm very big on is not using biometrics, so not using passwords, not using eye scans, things like that, because as I put here, you can't uncompromise biometrics. And while I put a picture of Angela Merkel here, there was actually, I think she was like the Minister of Defense for Germany. They proved that her biometrics were compromised with a high resolution photo that they took in the same room with a camera, and got her fingerprints from that. And then using Elmer's glue and a standard laser printer, they were able to compromise her biometric password for the hardware for that building, I believe it was. It's published out there. I think it's in my slide notes, is the exact article and whatnot. But the thing is, if your biometrics get compromised, there's nothing you can do to uncompromise it. Hold on just one second. Sorry.
Yes, sir. I'm Mary. I'm the charge nurse. Just saying hi to everybody.
Okay.
You doing okay right now?
Yes.
Okay. Need anything?
No.
Okay. Thanks.
Sorry. Nurses making sure I wasn't dead. Anyway, that was the thing that I was talking about, though, is biometrics. Don't use them. You can't uncompromise them. And once they're compromised, there's no switching them. So, all right. The next one, I think everybody pretty much knows this, but I really liked an announcement that Google made at Next this year in July. What they basically talked about was the fact that I think they have roughly 82,000 employees now. And the number of exploits since they switched to using physical token keys for multi-factor authentication is 0. And I think that's about a year or so that they've done the switchover. And that's just enormous. So the biggest thing that I tell people is use multi-factor authentication. It just, it has so many great benefits. It helps you secure things. And there's a lot of ways to do multi-factor authentication. And I'll get to some more ideas in here for that, but it lets you sleep well at night. If you're on that Have I Been Pwned website and they only have a password, well, great, they have your password. They don't have your token, it's not going to help them. So it's pretty much worthless to them. So
I had to use multi-factor authentication once, and I was forced to because of a company that I was working for at the time, and I didn't like it at first, but it's actually not that big a deal once you get used to it, and that's a pretty huge security improvement for not that much effort.
Right. I mean, like I said, if you look at the numbers, you look at the statistics, it's just, it's ridiculously cheap. And we'll talk about things like Google Authenticator and stuff like that. But there's other ways to implement multi-factors that they really do make you sleep well at night. So.
I actually think like on some of your Microsoft accounts, you can actually choose to only have like authentication and not even have a password.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, tokens and what it's doing is storing a key on the token, so it's still using authentication. But yeah, that's a great method as well. You're pretty much not really using the password otherwise. But I like to use multiple factors. And so, that's one of the things I was going to talk about next is, like, for example, Google, you can add the very simple employee's ID login. So if you have a badge and it's got an ID on it, it can be your employee ID, can be a multi-factor in addition to their password. So you don't end up things. I love the picture that a guy gave me of the code is written on the actual device. So I guess it stops dogs from breaking in or something, llamas. So it's a big thing. But yeah, and things like Bonnie was saying, it's not even expensive. I mean, everybody these days has a cell phone. Google Authenticator is free, and it's pretty simple to use and very, very secure. And if I really wanted to talk for a long time about geek things, I could talk about how things like SMS and phone calls is very insecure. The S7 protocol is trivial to reroute and whatnot if you know how it's done, and that's how some very high-profile acts have occurred because of exactly what you were talking about, where they used things like token only. In that case, they used only two-factor with a phone number, and so once the people were able to reroute the phone number, they were able to get in knowing nothing other than the phone number. So things like Google Authenticator. Another good Google tip, since we're staying on a lot of Google stuff, password alert. So this is a plugin for Chrome. It lets you, it tells you if you're on a compromised website that's impersonated Google, and it also helps with people like reusing their password. So it will tell you if you've just entered your Google password onto a different page. So, kind of enforces people using unique passwords as well. Oh, this one I think you guys will like. I'll be very interested to get you guys' opinion. So one of the things I talk about a lot that really is controversial is I do not like training where people are taught to identify things like phishes and scams. I work on scams and phishing emails quite often, and many times I get them where they take me more than an hour to identify if they're fake or not. Most people are used to seeing the really, really bad ones with the really bad English and bad graphics and stuff like that. But when you get a more concerted effort, they can be very, very hard to identify. And so the thing I try and make sure is that users should not try to identify scams. And the thing I try and tell people is companies especially, they have to look to the help desk and they have to encourage help desk use because one of the number one things I get told doing incident response pretty much is some variant of, I knew 5 seconds, 10 seconds after I clicked it, I shouldn't have. And that type of response that people give just means that I have to look for a way to get them to slow down. And so I tell users, like, if you think there's anything wrong, if you even have an inkling, your spider senses are tingling for whatever reason, just pick up the phone and call your help desk. Let them take a look at it, just do nothing with it. Almost all scams use a lot of psychological tricks to try and impart that there's some sort of urgency with the thing. And there's never that level of urgency with anything. It can all wait half an hour while your help desk looks at it or longer. So get that. They want to separate your emotion from your logic. And so you've got to give them that 10 seconds. So it's kind of an interesting thing that I tell people, do not try and identify scams. If you're not a computer expert, just leave it alone and get a computer expert to look at it and move on to the next thing. It'll save everybody a lot of trouble. So
the one that I got, there was the closest I ever got that I know of to being scammed was when they sent me, it was something about someone has made a purchase on your iTunes account, and it had like the perfect logo, everything, and the URL, the email thing was pretty close, and I was busy at the time, and it was like $115 charge for some mobile app game on my iTunes account, and it was like, we think this might be suspicious. Please log in and review your activity right away. And I was in the process of putting in, because I'd already put in my username and I was putting in my password. And then I was like, wait a minute, I think this is crap. And I went and just took 2 seconds to look at it. And it was like, sure enough, that's not iTunes. But I almost fell for that one. It was pretty good.
Yeah, and some of them can be very, very good. Like there's, this one's kind of been shut down, but for a while there, you could register domain names using some international characters, Honeycode and things like that. And some of the characters, for example, I believe in the Greek alphabet, look like the Arabic A, and so they registered that special A in the Greek language, and then did Apple.com. And so unless you looked at the actual character encoding of the URLs, it looked to a normal person like it said apple.com. And that's part of the reason why I tell people, like, they cannot identify scams. If there's any reason to risk that it's bad, or you're not expecting it or anything, just escalate it. But yeah, that's very, very common types of stories I hear. And one of the things I do is targeted phishing and targeted whale scams. So a lot of people have seen what I call generic viruses or generic scams that go all around the world or go viral. But when you get a specific scam or a virus or malware or a targeted email campaign that's targeting one company or even one user, it can be very, very good and very, very difficult to stop. And some of the things I talk about is specific groups that get attacked, oftentimes CFO, treasurers, that kind of the money people. We'll see a little bit more and a little bit different ones. But certain companies also will see. In fact, I know, Bonnie, you asked me about one of the things. When we get to a later slide, I'll show you some of the things that happened when I was working at SAIC and show you some of the specific scams that come in that you won't see otherwise unless you're working for a company like that.
Yeah, you started to go through that a little bit with me when we were talking in Canada, and it was just super interesting for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm a nerd. I don't know why. I just thought it was really cool.
Well, I think it's funny, so I'm glad you do. All right, this one I won't spend too much time on, but from a disclosure, I am a board of advisors member for Virtru. But these are 3 things you can do to really help your email. So if you don't know what these are, look them up. But DKIM, SPF, DMARC, set them up for your email. They'll help a lot with other people spoofing your accounts. And by using them, you'll kind of make the world a better place for email. And DMARCion's a great way to do things. And Virtru is an absolutely amazing encryption thing. I could probably do an entire presentation for a night on just Virtru and how good it is, but not tonight. But I did talk about a little bit about the fact that I work in spam. So I do tell people, email percentage of compromises that come from spear phishing email, 91%. Most people argue it's somewhere between 85 and 95. So it is the #1 vector. So email is a big, big, big issue for security, and something that you have to pay a lot of attention to. So if you realize that it's it'll be your first level of defense to know that's a big risk. This one's a good one. So I'd love to hear the panelists' idea on this, but this is something I'm really kind of anti, is using out-of-office messages. So hackers love out-of-office messages. This is where they get a lot of the intel, they email you, and people send things back. Like, this is a perfectly normal one. Hi, I'm traveling from the 7th to 28th. I'll be in Costa Rica. I'll have limited internet. If in my absence, please email somebody else for help. Very, very normal. And then it'll have your signature with your email address and everything on that. So, the bad part is this is kind of what the hackers see. Hi, I'm out of the country. Please rob my house. Now's a great time to impersonate me because I don't have email. Oh, and Bob might be a great guy to kind of try and trick email impersonating me. And in Google, for example, there's a really easy way to fix this. You can see that checkbox, only send a response to people in my contacts. It's a great, easy way to fix things so that you're not sending this information. But out-of-office messages, be careful of what you're sharing. A lot of people try and overshare, especially around vacation information. And if I'm a bad actor and I know you're going to be out of the country and unavailable by email for the next 35 days, you've just given me a lot of information and a great window to go attack you. So.
See, this is really what inspired me to ask you to come on the show, because that kind of tip is so simple, and it's like as soon as you say that, it's like, oh yeah, that's right, but it's not really common sense.
I totally agree. It's like I've never thought about that.
Yeah, and the bad part is that I do a Venn diagram in some of my speeches where I talk about the fact that I'm 95% good, I'm 3% altruistic, and I'm 2% evil, and that 2%. The 2% evil lets me kind of think about how the bad guys will work and hopefully stay a little bit ahead of them on their tactics. But yeah, it's really quite common.
I can see that about you, Kevin. You have that wry sense of humor.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so the next slide here, this is actually an impersonator. So this is somebody actually sending an email as our chairman at the Apache Software Foundation, asking for money to be sent. So I was in the office of the treasurer at the Apache Software Foundation, But if you hover over the email address, you'll notice it comes up as executiveoffice2@zoho.com. Had to work with Zoho quite a bit for them to get their security act together, because people could create email addresses over there. But in any case, very common for people to use the names. Google has some warnings for this, but they're not. They don't always catch everything, and they don't always catch certain things. Not to mention the fact that, some of the impersonations that we see. So, for example, you're on vacation and you've given Bob's email address. One of the scams you'll see quite a bit is things like where they'll go in and they'll create an email address. So we'll use Phil Stites as example here, and they'll create phil.stites@yahoo.com. And they'll email and say, "Hi, this is Phil. I'm in Costa Rica," because remember we told everybody we're in Costa Rica in our out of office message. And it goes, "Hey, I forgot to pay a bill before I left. It's really, really important this gets paid. Please make sure this is done as soon as possible and let me know." And they email from an email address that looks like Phil Stites, and it's got his name on it. And, quite a bit of times this is paid. And depending on the country you're dealing with and the scale of economies, a very, very small sum of money can be a lot of money for them. And they'll use that to see if they can fish you for more money, or if they can attack more people, or they'll let it lie for a while and they'll come after you, or they'll try and drain the bank account if they can get the ACH information and payment information out of you. So
it's diabolical.
Yep. Yeah. So, and this is one that I really kind of get quite. So one of the odd jobs that I do every once in a while, especially back when I had a active clearance, is people die and they need their computers taken care of, and their spouses, for example, won't know anything about computers. And say those people have sensitive data, or they work with a clearance, who can go into their computers and help them take care of that stuff. And I can tell you this is a trick I use oftentimes to get that kind of information, is just social media. So you got to be very careful. Think about all those questions that you get asked for security questions, and they're usually quite dumb, because things like birthdays and parents and where you went to college and all that stuff, you can typically find out with a little bit of trolling on LinkedIn and Twitter and whatnot and Facebook. And all of a sudden you've got quite a bit of information, very easy to find. And the picture in this story is really quite interesting. It showed a situation where apparently the Russians knew about it, and the East Germans, but we built a tunnel underneath East Germany underneath West Germany, below the wall into East Germany. And apparently everybody knew about it because it melted the snow on top of it. But one of the interesting things they did is when the Germans found out about it, they instructed their people to basically make all the personal phone calls they could, so that they would tie up the people listening to the phone lines. And one of the interesting exhibits that I haven't seen, but I've been told exists in Berlin somewhere, is a wall in one of these rooms all scratched with all this information. And it has like who's dating who's married to who's got a mistress, etc. Because they basically mined all the social information out of what the Germans had assumed would be worthless information, because they were just tying up the people monitoring the phone calls because they knew they were being monitored. But they turned it around and actually mined it for social information, which was maybe not as valuable, but still very, very valuable to what they were doing.
That's clever.
It is, and it's a neat story. So this is the one you were talking about. So business social media spear phishing. So this is a real imitation, and I don't have all of them redacted, but SAIC, for example, is a United States company that works a lot in the cyber field in the government. And as you can imagine, a lot of these people have very interesting names, things like the ACCXI, and there's information out here that you can't see. So I'm going to switch over to another window where I have some more screenshots. So eventually I will do a presentation on just this. But for example, where is Jemmy in here? Is he in here? Oh, no, he's in a different one. So I'll show you some of the profiles, see if I can get to some of them. So this is one of them. And you'll notice he lists that he's a Jesse A, so he's an engineer. Okay, so maybe that one's legit. But then you start getting some other ones that are kind of interesting. Like, let's see, this is Brenda Coach. This one's kind of interesting. There's interesting pictures, and I can tell you we don't have many beauty therapists at SAIC, so very interesting. And there's also some things that I look for when I'm doing my work in anti-spam, and we call them signatures. One of the things we're pretty sure of is there's probably less than 100 bad actors that send all the spam in the world. There's always other people who spam, but when we're talking about the big players, there's less than 100. And there's signatures. A lot of times, back when I was doing research, we used to monitor spamming runs, and we'd call them like Company 1, Company 2, Company 3. And one point in time, we actually did an analysis and realized we could collapse it all down to 7 companies. And so you'll see those type of signatures when you're doing these things. Let's see if I can show you one here. So this is one of the ones that's quite interesting. So this is Mandy. She supposedly works for SAIC. One of the things I really like here, notice the hearts in her profile picture.
Snapchat, so professional.
Yes, absolutely. You'll also notice things like I got to see how to pronounce it, University of New Mexico. But you'll notice the of is not spelled correctly. It's uppercase. New Mexico is lowercase. Not to mention,
I would not have caught that.
Yeah, so those are little signatures. So this is Mandy Bullen. Now, if I go, let's see, I think it's there's another one in here. Just trying to find it. Is it Dora? Sorry, I haven't quite prepared all this for this talk. You hit me with it. Yeah, so you'll notice Dora Lamb here. You'll notice she has another cropped photo. It's even missing, leaning against a wall or something. You'll notice she has the University of New Mexico again. Similar signature. So this is almost certainly the same person that did this work. So it's quite interesting. And a lot of these are not very elegant. Like, some of these, for example, I like pointing out this one here. This person didn't even care. Their last name is ASPFG. So just look down at your keyboard for that one. But they've listed their senior staff engineer at SAIC. I don't think so. And one of the ones, we'll go back to this thing here. Is Jemmy on here now? Give me a moment. I'll load Jemmy. It's just so you guys can see it. I just got to figure out where I'm. Let me stop sharing for a second, and I'll load it up. Because Jemmy's email is quite interesting, and I don't have his photo because at the time I didn't realize it. But Jemmy looked about 12 years old in his photo, and he claimed to be a founder of SAIC from Bangladesh.
He could be a founder. You never know.
Absolutely. I mean, 1969 founded company in America. Yeah, he could totally.
And now he's 12. It can happen. You have to suspend your disbelief.
I do blame myself. There we go. Here's Jemmy's email. So let me go ahead and turn on my presentation again. If I can figure out if I ever stopped it. I think I did. Oh, it says I'm presenting. All right, well, you guys got to see it. Can you guys see my screen still?
No, we still see you.
Yep.
Sometimes you have to go and click on it if you have like more than one.
I'm clicking it again. It was saying
there you go.
Screen sharing.
Now I see it.
So this is Jemmy's email. I love this. Founder at SAIC in Bangladesh. So these are kind of easy sometimes to figure out, but they get harder, they get more complex, they get funnier, and whatnot. So, I do have firsthand experience to show people that this type of, spear phishing and business social media mining is very, very real. And this happened, when I accepted a role as at SAIC as a chief security engineer, and these people came out of the woodwork, and we actually talked to the LinkedIn security and trust people. We got the not so much the tacit permission, but the wink nod permission to go ahead and create a fake account, which is how we got this information from them. And I'll show you one more file, just to show you how effective these exercises can be. So we created a fake account to then reach back to these same bad actors or to act as bait for the bad actors, so we could see who they had compromised. And so I think, where's one in here? So
this is where your job becomes kind of fun. Like this is like, now it's like into like the mystery,
Oh, I love screwing with them. It's kind of like, do you ever talk to people who love having telemarketers on the phone and they like just talk to them for hours and then don't buy anything from them?
Just to waste their time.
Just to waste their time, yeah. So this one's particularly interesting. So they compromised our CIO. And once, if
is that actually the CIO? And they're connected to him, so that makes them look more legitimate, because if they're in his network, they must be legit.
Bingo. And then once they do that, they can also see all of his private contact information that he's added on LinkedIn, etc.
Did you go to him and shame him?
Well, I think I just did on this video.
That's terrible.
Yes.
Very nice.
Yes, I did give him a heads up on it, but no, it just shows that it's very, very easy, and that was kind of what I was showing here on this slide. You know, that this Subrata, who's in somewhere in India where we don't have an office, and I didn't show you, but I've actually looked up the fake connections and things like that. So I've checked; people aren't actually employees or contractors.
Hold on, Kevin. I'll be right back. I got to go send a LinkedIn network request to Bob.
Oh God. He'll probably, you know, we should check your LinkedIn. Do you have flowers or stars or anything in your profile picture?
No, it's actually disappointingly professional.
Oh, sorry. Then I don't know that he'll accept it. But you know,
you're terrible.
That was the point that we had, was what have they compromised? How did this person, what are the 10 connections this person got? You know, and the problem is with LinkedIn, for example, there's no veracity. The person can just say they work for SAIC. There's no ability to check. And I will show you one more.
And what is it that they're after? Like, they're trying to build this network, and then what do they do with that information?
Usually they're trying to just build up compromise network, just data about the company, things that they can leverage.
Like names of important people and people who are authorized to maybe approve invoices, that kind of thing.
Money, yeah. How they can get to and then they can impersonate XYZ person and they look legit. And just show you, like Mandy Bullen, I think was the one with the hearts. You know, you can see here she doesn't work for SAIC. So
right.
Not real. Nobody works there. They're named Bullen. So yes, it's very interesting. And I showed you Jemmy's. Oh, I didn't realize I had him on here. I would have not gone to all that trouble. But yeah, we were founded in 1969. He's about 12 years old. So you figure they were 20 years old at least in 1969, born in 49. They're not on LinkedIn these days. So that's my LinkedIn profile. So if you want to talk to me. Oh,
wait, that was fast. Okay, hold on and go back, because Melissa wanted to know, how do we uncompromise LinkedIn? Like if you delete the contact, if you realize that you've accepted someone and then you go back and look and they look kind of fishy, do you delete them, or what's?
So I would probably, depends on how fishy they look. You can report them as fishy. There is a LinkedIn privacy and trust. There is a nation state level security group at LinkedIn. So it really depends on what the issue. I probably would start by sending it to me and I'll tell you how bad it is. That's probably the best I could say. I don't know. I don't know that I could give you advice right offhand. Obviously, unlinking them is not a bad idea ever. But just realize, you know, what information do you have there? What, how much is out there? I've owned a company for 25 years, so my information is fairly easy to find. So I don't worry about stuff too much. But, you know, a lot of people should be more worried, especially if they try and have some level of privacy. They're not familiar with how much of this information can be spread and archived and never deleted. So this is a neat trick. You were talking again about some kind of easy stuff to do. So monitoring your credit is a great way to watch out for cyber issues. And if you don't belong to Discover, there's a referral. I get some money for that. We donate it to the McGrail Foundation, which is a 501c3, if you do use that. But basically with that, you get free Social Security monitoring and alerts. They don't charge you anything. So unlike the Trust ID and those various services, this is based on Experian and you get it for free. So sign up for the card if you have good credit. Don't use it, throw it in a drawer, and you get their free Social Security monitoring and security alerts without a problem. Great way to do it. And you can see whether or not they're doing something with your credit. Are they checking? Are they trying to open more accounts? What are they doing? Is it an identity theft? Is it a scam to see where you work? That kind of stuff. So this one's more for administrators, so I won't go into it much, but this is basically just, you know, we all, I think, are geeks, so we like trying new things. And I try and make sure companies try new things, because if they don't, you end up with shadow IT. If they try and lock things down like Fort Knox, I've done security for places like Fort Knox, so I understand when it needs to be done, but the average company doesn't need to do it. And so it's kind of interesting for me as a security standpoint that, you know, you have to have the right security level for your company. And if you don't, you're going to create security risks because people are going to do things like, you know, things we've heard about, politicians forwarding their email to their Yahoo account or their AOL account, or users creating their own Gmail domain because they can't share things. So they just do it on their own domain rather than using their official domain. And the minute they do that, you don't control it, and you're going to have security issues. So, this one, again, more for admins, so I won't bore into it too much, but I like incident response plans. Even if it's a piece of paper you pull out, it says panic. That's okay. People feel calmer when they have that kind of stuff. But, you know, like some of the incident response plans that people need is, even if you don't work for a company, say you work at home, what do you do if you lose your cell phone? Is it encrypted? Does it have a PIN on it? Do you have the Find My Cell Phone type of tools on? Are you using something like Lookout or something like that, or Google's tools? Apple has it as well, where you know your login and your password, and you can log in and make your phone scream, or you can remote wipe it. Things like that can make people a lot more calm, because if you lose a phone and it's PIN encrypted, it's PIN passworded and it's encrypted, and you can remote wipe it, it's a piece of hardware, and you can replace a piece of hardware. If it's not, you've got a whole bunch of sensitive data on it. Even if it's just personal data on it, you've got a whole bigger problem on your hands. And if it's a laptop or whatnot, you know, you should have a incident response. If you're a company, think about, what do you do if you have an active breach? Who do you call? How do you escalate things? You turn off the routers so they can't continue exfiltrating data from your thing if you think they're still active on your network. Little things like this, giving people an idea of things they should look at, can really help and keep speed mattering. Because speed matters in these situations. Alrighty, we're getting close to the end. Monitoring, I won't talk again. This is too admin-y things. But I do like this one. You know, the big thing I try and do with security is I explain why, and that's why I think a lot of my security tips resonate with people, because I try and tell them why they do these things and how bad actors will use this data. And I don't do it to scare people, but I do it so that they know how sometimes easy these things are to do. And if you don't want to necessarily scare people, but you want to give them a reality jolt, if you will, the sites like Have I Been Pwned are great websites to go and just say, hey, type in your email address and see if it's been compromised. You know, and you know, otherwise, one of the jokes I love is Cunningham's Law. And Cunningham's Law, what it says is, if you want the correct answer for something on the internet, then post the wrong answer, and you'll get it. So, and so
I have heard that before.
And so these are the security tips that I would use for Cunningham's Law. But you know, it's a great example. It doesn't tell you why these would work or not work. It just says, here's a list. Those aren't as useful.
Just do what I said.
Do what I said. I mean, it doesn't work. And unfortunately, a lot of customers have to learn the hard way. So,
and really, I like the way you do it, because if I understand why you're telling me to do something in a certain way, I'm going to remember it. And it's just, now suddenly you've made it intuitive.
Yeah. And I mean, there's some great stories. I mean, when there was an agency looking at smartphones, and they wanted to be able to let apps be installed on the smartphones. One of the founders of InfoShield took a brand new smartphone out of the box, installed an app on it, and then basically showed how it could be configured so that when the app was installed on it, it gave it a phone, or anytime you called the phone number from a specific phone number, it would answer it without ringing and turn on the microphone. So it basically
that's creepy.
Yep. And he did, like I said, he did it with a brand new out of the box cell phone and showed him how easy it was in literally like 5 seconds to do. So, wow. And the bad part is, like, I mean, I guess I think it scares a lot of people too often to do those kind of demonstrations, but they're real. There's a lot of scary things out there that people can do. And I don't want people to be living under rocks and wearing tinfoil hats. I want them to use technology and use it intelligently. And some of these tools are how they can do that.
I had a friend a long time ago who was, I don't know, it must have been in the late 90s, who was a network security guy. and he was a friend of a friend, and he actually pulled up my personal webcam and freaked me out. I was like, I didn't give him access to anything. And I was like, how on earth could you do that? And just the fact that somebody could do that just freaked me out a lot. And I never forgot that. So now that I know how easy it is to just, anybody can access your webcam, the little green light is not going to come on. Like, I think there are so many people that just really, I never would have known that that was even possible.
Yep, that's why I have the little tiny camera shield on my phone or on my laptop, just for that reason. So, absolutely. So, okay, next rule. I try not to talk too much about the administrator ones, but this is something I love. So, Usenix used to have a thing called the System Administrators Guild, or SAGE, and they have a code of ethics, and I call it the IT 10 Commandments. And if you have administrators, have them go take a look at it. It's a great way of trusting your administrators. The Latin quote, quis custodia, custodius. Just basically, that's the thing most people know is like who guards the guards. So, you know, how are you, if your administrators are a risk, how are you secure? This is a great way of doing it. And most administrators, every administrator looks at it will go, wow, this is amazing. So take a look at it, the Usenix System Administrators Code of Ethics. It's fabulous. Oh, yes, this is a good one. So this is one I've actually been teaching to my kids a lot. And as much of a Google fan as I am, when I have to talk to people about Gmail versus G Suite, for example, a lot of people think that they think that G Suite monitors their email, and it does not. Gmail, on the other hand, does monitor aggregately, so they look at emails and they mine it for data information. And Google makes a lot of money off of that data mining. And that's one of the reasons why you can get Gmail for free. Now, I don't view that as a privacy issue because they don't do it on a one-to-one person basis. But I have a feeling Google probably has a lot of insight into a lot of things. They can probably, they have statistics like how many people emailed the word Trump yesterday or emailed the word Pelosi and things like that. So just giving a simple example. And so what I tell my kids and what I tell other people is if you aren't paying for the product, you are the product. And so these things you're getting for free, how are they making money? How are they using you to make money? And that's something you have to ask yourself. And what are they doing with that data is a big security risk for what you're doing. So this one, have you guys seen this one before, Lance or Bonnie?
Yes.
I have not.
So these you see a lot if you own a company or you work in an accounting. So these are what I call invoice scams. I do use the word scams because technically it's not illegal. If you look on that the picture that I've got a little red box around a thing that says this notice is not a bill. But what they do is they send these invoices, if you will, for a service, and they convince you it's a service. And domain names is a big one. IDNS is well known to do this kind of scam, where they just send companies that have domain names an email, a bill, sometimes in the mail, oftentimes in the mail. And they say, hey, your domain's expiring, you've got to renew it. And it's actually an entire scam to take over your domain name. They are a legitimate company. They do registration. So I'm not saying they're illegal, but you'll notice they charge like, I don't know, $180 for 5 years. And if you go to places like Bulk Register or GoDaddy, you'll probably pay a third of that. So they're very, very expensive. Similar scams, this is one a lot more people will see. So this is an advertisement is what's written in the red that I've done on this one. And this is I believe, a response to do extended coverage on your car. And you'll see it come in and like say, hey, your Honda, what does it say? And this one, it says, my Honda, Nissan, Toyota, the warranty is running up. I have to extend the warranty.
I've gotten.
You've gotten those, yeah. So invoice scams, these are very common, and they, there's a lot of different variants of these. They're semi-legitimate companies, but you got to be very careful of them. And sometimes, for example, with the domain names, once they get transferred, we want to transfer them back. We consider that a security risk from a company standpoint, et cetera. So.
Yeah, that seems like the dead tree version of the spam phone call of, hi, I'm calling from your credit card company.
Absolutely. And those exist in email as well.
Yeah, I tried to talk to them once and said, all right, which credit card? Well, your credit card company. I have a few. Which one are you calling about? Well, the one that you use. Like, okay. I tried to just, pull out from them. And, they were pretty good at just not answering any questions until I just hang up.
You know, I've often thought about putting slides in here about some of those scams, because one of the ones that just kills me all the time is the one that they call up, they say, "Hi, I'm the IRS. You have an overdue bill. If you don't pay it by tomorrow, we're going to send the sheriffs to arrest you. Please go to the Walmart and buy either a Walmart or an iTunes gift card and then give it to us over the phone, and we'll use that to pay your bill." And I'm like, really? Do you guys think that IRS accepts, you know, Apple iTunes gift cards for payment? I mean, but apparently people get scammed by that all the time. So
a couple of weeks ago, I got a message on Facebook from a very lovely 90-year-old woman I know that said that she was in Japan and lost her wallet, and would I buy her an iTunes gift card so that she could have some money? And it's like, there's no way that this woman would be there. No way that she would think that iTunes is the way to get money. Like, there was just nothing about it that made any sense. But apparently iTunes is nearly like cash, so it's a good way to launder money.
yeah, I'm so jaded from my work in anti-spam, but I fear one day that there's just actually going to be this Nigerian prince trying to give away all his money and wondering why nobody will accept it from him. So
now, there is actually one Nigerian prince who's very big in the Angular community. Sani Yusuf is legitimate, but he's never given me a dime.
He does not give me money.
Well, he must not be a real Nigerian prince then. So
I think he is a real Nigerian prince, but I don't think he's passing out money. I just saw him last week, and I didn't get any money from him. But actually, now that you say that, Lance, I'm gonna start asking him. Like, hey, you're Nigerian, you're a prince. Give me some money, Sonny.
Absolutely. Alrighty, the next one. This is again more of an administrator one.
You know what Sonny's gonna say? Yeah, Bonnie, give me your bank account number. Sure, yes. I'll spend that right away.
I'll spend it right now. All right. Well, we won't talk too much about the offloading. We won't talk too much about the DLP alerts. That one's Chromebooks. Really can't recommend a better product these days. They're cheap. And Amber Schroeder, who's with a company called Paraben, that is one of these people that cracks all the cell phones and things like that. That you know, very, very good, like Celebrite and whatnot. You know, her quote is basically 2 worst fears. It's cheap and it's full encryption. So, you know, you really can't beat them. And if you have a Pixelbook, there's a built-in Titan security key. The power button is actually a built-in UTF security key. So if you have one, you can use it. Thank you. Some stuff there. That was for my old one. So my last 2 tips: join the CCC. So if you're not on this, it's a great community for talking about Google Cloud. Probably should join the Angular one too. One of the tips on here was how to create some free super admin accounts, so you can have some role differentiation for your day-to-day account versus your admin account. That's a standard process for security elevation for your privileges. But the last slide I have really is about AngularJS. So the issues I've seen, there's a wonderful article. I put it in the notes here, and I sent Bonnie the slides so that she can share it. But OWASP did a presentation in June of 2017 where they talked about some of the issues. Great security thing. They talked about some of the problems they found. But the biggest issues that I find, especially when we're doing scans, is out-of-date Angular, people using Angular sandboxes. And Angular sandboxes were, people thought they were kind of secure, but they really weren't. And Angular took them out in 1.7. So I think 1 or maybe 1.6. 1.6 and above, I think, doesn't have the sandbox. But the minute I see an Angular installation that's got the sandbox on, I know it's exploitable. So you have to keep your Angular up to date. The big things I see with people is they're using forks of Angular or they're using locally modified. And that means that every time I tell them, like, oh, your Angular's out of date, and they go, oh, yeah, they haven't modified it because we added this special bell and whistle. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, every day that goes by, I can, you know, potentially hack your site or do things that you don't want done because you're not staying up to date. And they're not staying up to date because they made a poor decision in the original deployment to use a fork or locally modify Angular, and that's just never going to work well. So, you know, with open source and things like that, you know, it's one of the dangers. You got to use the original source sometimes. Additionally, make sure you're using proper whitelists. I can't tell you how many times I just see, you know, whitelist on star, and sometimes I see star used incorrectly, which still is the equivalent of almost using star in certain cases. So if I see those in the whitelisting, I know I can pull in other resources and sometimes do things I'm not supposed to do with templates and whatnot. And if I can do that, and if I'm using the right versions, you're pwned. So that's my Angular tips for them. So I'm sure you guys have many, many more. There's a great security tip on just the docs for Angular, as well as that OWASP that's in here if you guys want to go look. But it's a really great framework to use to stay away from things. Don't use the DOM directly. Angular and things like that do a good job of keeping up on the security things, keeping up on the styles that can be exploited. So if you use it, you'll be much, much, much more secure in the long run. So that's all I have for tonight. This is awesome. Thank you, Kevin.
Sure. Thank you.
I'm looking at the YouTube chat to see if there were any more questions in there. I know Melissa had some. She was following along with us. Let's see. Oh, I think Kevin dropped off. Okay, well, thank you so much to Kevin, and I'm gonna tweet out his links, and then also Felix and Lance. Thank you guys. Melissa, if you're still watching, I hope you join us again next week, and we'll try to get those internet issues worked out. Okay, so that's it. Next week, I think we are actually meeting, I believe, in person at blinds.com. So if you guys are here in Houston, try to join us.
The day before Thanksgiving?
You know what? I was just talking to Reggie about that, and I was trying to figure out. I was like, I don't know if they're going to be open. Thank you for reminding me about that, because I need to get follow up with Reggie and find out if they're going to be open, if they're going to be closing that day. Kevin, I was still saying goodbye, and you dropped, and I was like, man, Kevin's gone.
I was stupidly trying to close my presentation, and I closed the presentation window and realized that killed my entire Hangout. So
that's okay. We were talking about next week because we're supposed to meet in person the third Wednesday of every month, but then it's going to be Thanksgiving, and I don't know if we're still meeting in person. So we will definitely be online next week, and we have Max ngWizard coming on to teach us really cool stuff. Regardless, we will meet next week, but I don't know if we'll be in person. So if you are here in Houston, just stay tuned, and I will find out and let you guys know. But either way, for those of us who join us remotely, we will be on with ngWizard Max. So I'm super excited about that.
You should have.
And the week after that, we're going to have.
Would have had a turkey.
Right. Yeah, I should prepare turkey next week. And then the week after that, we have Jeff Cross and Dan Muller. So that'll be pretty fun too, talking about NG Console. Okay, so that's it for tonight. And one more time, Kevin, can you tell them your Twitter?
Sure. So my Twitter is the @KAMCGRAIL. So KA McGrail. So that's my full initials and name. So
thank you very much for coming on and teaching us, because I mean, and I know for an expert like you, a lot of this seems like common sense, but it's really not. There's so many things that you mentioned that I just never really thought about, and it's simple stuff. And when you explain it, it seems so simple, but it's not simple. And so I really appreciate you coming on and giving us these pointers. And I hope you'll come back sometime soon. Maybe you'll tell us what happens to a nuclear plant in a hurricane.
Absolutely, not happy to do that. Happy to talk about other things. I'm sorry I didn't ask Felix. I forgot you were on the panel, sir, so I didn't ask you many questions. But yeah, I and you answered the one thing I get questions a lot, which are people like, I'm never using out of office again. So
yeah, I never thought of that. Yeah, Felix is just getting warmed up. He'll be back as a panelist again. We're gonna actually just as soon as he gets enough practice, we're gonna have him on as a guest to teach us something cool. But he's got to get used to the idea first.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, you guys. I really appreciate everybody coming on tonight, and we'll hopefully see you all again soon.
All right. Good night, Houston.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.